Incoming broadcast!
What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is obviously my review for the 1997 film Boogie Nights. So Boogie Nights turns 25 this year, which gives me a pretty darn good excuse to finally sit down and review this film for you guys. This is a film directed by PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, the same director that gave us There Be Blood, of course Punch Drunk Love, Magnolia, The Master, and a slew of others. He's one of my favorite directors, and this is also a film with a stacked cast. I'm not going to be able to name every single one, but this movie stars Mark Wahlberg, Julianne Moore, Burt Reynolds, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Don Cheadle, and a slew of many others. It's a great cast, and they all are fantastic in this movie. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, I think this film is a masterpiece. It wasn't always like that, though. When I first saw this film in summer 2015, I thought it was really, really good, but I didn't love it. But at the same time, I did know that it was going to be a film that I would return to. Just like, honestly, all of PTA's films. Like, he is one of those directors that the more you revisit his films, the more and more you get from his films. And that's what I love about it. It goes to show what a great film is and how the rewatchability value being very high makes it so that way not only you're entertained, but artistically you are engaged. Because this film has so much to offer. From the technical aspects of the camera work, like the cinematography is to die for. I absolutely love it. The camera is constantly moving, and there are many long takes. There's one in particular involving William H. Macy where he's coming out from the house into the house, and it's an amazing scene. Don't want to spoil anything. There's another really tense scene. That's the thing. This is a movie that you wouldn't think that it was really tense, but it is. And the last act in particular, holy cow, the tension you really feel, especially during the firecracker scene with Alfred Molina. My goodness, that scene, every single time it gets me, I'm like, okay, so like, I almost forget like what happens. Like, it's crazy. Don Cheadle, there's a scene involving him that's really tense as well towards the end. It's amazing. It's PTA doing what he does best, and that is just making a film that somehow works on many different fronts and many different genres. Like, you can watch this film and see it as like a rags to riches kind of movie, but also like a movie that is about excess and how, you know, you get to the top, and then at the same time, it's like, where do you go from the top? You go to the bottom. And it's one of those films that I just personally get a lot from. Every single time I feel like I'm finding new details about this film that I love. Like this time around, for some reason, I just always thought that the movie had more of like a score by John Bryan and less of like a soundtrack. But this time around, I did pick up on the fact that no, the soundtrack is a lot more heavy than the actual score by John Bryan. And it's something that makes me retroactively think about PTA's work and how I always knew that Punch Drunk Love was kind of the turning point where Punch Drunk Love onwards, his movies were a lot more artsy, and they had it where the camera work was a lot more like still, a lot more tripod-based shots. And now I'm realizing that Punch Drunk Love onwards, his movies had a lot more inherent desire to focus on the score and not the soundtrack of movies. And I think that that's quite fascinating. Also, there's a lot less in the sound design. There's a lot less busyness, so to speak. Like, Boogie Nights is a movie that when you look at the sound design, it's constantly bombarding you with sound. Versus when you watch something like Punch Drunk Love and There Be Blood, there are a lot of times where silence is key. And I really like that. And I also just like the fact that PTA is someone that grew. Now, again, that's not to say that I think that his movies like Boogie Nights or Magnolia aren't good. I love both of them. I think Magnolia is so close to being a masterpiece, and I do think that Boogie Nights is a masterpiece in itself. But I just think that it's quite fascinating to be able to look at Boogie Nights and then be able to look at There Be Blood and be like, wow, these are done by the same director. That's amazing. Also, what's fascinating is that PTA directed this movie at age 26. Like, a 26-year-old. I'm 26, and he directed something like Boogie Nights. A studio was like, you know what? We're going to give you full creative control. You're going to make a movie that's over 2 hours. You're going to make a movie that's 2 hours and 35 minutes. It's unheard of. Oh, and it's R-rated. It's insane to just think about that, and I'm just so glad that he was able to hit it out of the park. So you have a great cast, you have a lot of themes and messages to take from this movie, you have great cinematography, as I already mentioned, a great soundtrack, and I also just think that this movie, the three-act structure really enhances the experience. You have the first act, the rise, you have the second act, the enjoyment of the embellishments of the excess and everything, and the third act, the downfall. But also the change of time. I love the fact that they have it where it's like the 70s going into the 80s. It shows how everything changed. Not just how in the porn industry, but also how people looked at the porn industry. It wasn't just for pleasure and everything, but also just how people had to change and everything the same way that people's inherent mindset towards that did. And I think that I'm saying all of this simply because I think that it's a fascinating film. And I think that Not enough people seem to talk about it these days. Like, I know it got nominated for 3 Oscars, all well deserved, and I do think it should have gotten nominated for a bit more when it came out in 1997. But I just feel like when people think of PTA's work, they don't really put Boogie Nights higher up on the list. And I think that's a shame because Boogie Nights, for me, it's a masterpiece. I think that if you haven't seen it by now, you should definitely watch it. It's also a movie that I love for the fact that it wears its influences on its sleeve proudly. And I gotta thank Scorsese because when you watch Boogie Nights, you can definitely see influences from Goodfellas, Raging Bull. And I think that Scorsese, if he were to watch Boogie Nights, I think he'd be proud because Boogie Nights, it's cinema. It's a great, great film, and I love it. I own it on Blu-ray. This is one of the early Blu-rays. I do hope that it gets a 4K transfer at some point. I know PTA apparently isn't about the 4K format, which is a shame. But nonetheless, highly recommend this movie on Blu-ray. And honestly, Boogie Nights, screw it. I am going to give it personally a... So you guys, those are my thoughts on Boogie Nights. I apologize for being a little bit all over the place. I just got done watching it, well, rewatching it, I should say. So I'm still kind of letting it all sink in and everything. And I just wanted to immediately film. I'm in love with this film. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and it's fantastic. So, Boogie Nights, guys, what did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you've seen all of PTA's films, or if you've seen a decent amount, let me know your ranking of his films down below, as well as where Boogie Nights ranks in that ranking list down in the comment section down below. And as always, don't forget subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.